I see the back window break and the bullets whizzing towards me. And I'm like, oh, snap, we're getting shot at. So my friend obviously falls, and I was like blown away. Like I just froze. So I was born in the San Gabriel Valley. It's the east side of LA. I grew up in some project housing. It's called Ramona Gardens. To immigrant parents. My mother was a Buddhist, father was atheist. My dad struggled a lot with alcoholism and abuse. His father was very abusive towards him. Me, my brother, I have an older sibling, he's about 18 months older than me. Both of us struggled a lot with our relationship with our parents. My mother, being Buddhist, was very, very submissive to my father. So my dad would beat on us. He would, randomly like even make us drink with him at times. Just a lot of like crazy things. And it developed a lot of anger and rage inside of me as a kid.
And Johnny, what are some of your earliest memories growing up?
I just remember up until like 5 years old, that's when the beatings got more intense. But I do remember my dad being a chef, cooking for us. So it was kind of this weird thing where he would beat me and then he would cook for me. Right? I guess that was his way of like apologizing. Being in an Asian family, you never really hear I love you and you never hear I'm sorry. So my dad would never say I'm sorry, would never say I love you, but he would try to show it in ways when he was sober and he wasn't, drunk. He would cook food. So I remember him making black bean noodles from scratch. And he was like teaching me, like making the noodles, tying them. Shou la mian in Mandarin literally means like hand-pulled noodles. So my dad was a very good chef, functional alcoholic, but very, very good chef. And so I remember him making the food, and that was my favorite, black bean noodles. In the house, I was really scared because my dad ruled with an iron fist. But when I went out, I was very rowdy, just very, very, just a bad kid, a bad apple, rotten apple. And I started to notice as the beatings got worse, my anger got worse. I was now getting more frustrated and being more physical and actually more violent as I was getting older. So yeah, I ended up doing some crazy things at like 10 years old even, like fighting kids and like, hitting them with like books and like just really, really like heinous things. So I dealt with my anger usually through violence. And I felt like at a young age, violence was like a universal language. Everybody understood it. You don't have to use your mouth that much. I wasn't really a good talker. And so I would just fight all the time.
How aware of gang crime were you as a young boy?
I was aware. I grew up in the projects. So like there was a predominant gang out there that was running the project housing. And they asked me, where are you from? What gang are you from? And I was like, I'm not from anywhere, right? That was when I was 12 years old. So that was the first interaction. Where are you from? And then they had, guns pulled out already. I was 12. And these were kids too. They were 14, 16, 17-year-olds in between this age range. And they pulled up like 4 deep, meaning 4 people. And I remember, everyone had a gun except the driver. The driver was like the getaway driver. Like, where are you from? F this gang, F that gang, which means they're letting you know, like, we don't mess with this gang or that gang. I just remember like freezing up completely. But afterwards, it was weird. They were like, all right, if you're not from anywhere, then do you want to kick it? Which means like, do you want to hang out? And I was like, yeah. I mean, it's either hang out with you guys who have all the money and the power and the guns, or go home and get beat up by my dad. So I was like, I'm gonna just hang out with you. And the first day of hanging out with them, they gave me $100. And you're 12 years old, $100 at that time. These are the old $100 bills in America, not the blue faces. It was just really cool, So I was like, wow. And I remember feeling this explosion of like love coming out of my heart, and I was very thankful towards these people. From then it was a wrap. I was full-fledged into the gang. Yep.
Can you tell me a bit about this gang? What was their identity?
Yeah, so we were Chinese predominantly. Wah Ching literally means Chinese youth. So it was younger Chinese kids. We had people who were older. And it's a generational thing. I think we started in the 1960s from San Francisco. Basically came down, the big homies came down and established factions in our neighborhood. And yeah, I joined that gang because they were the most powerful gang. So just to give a sense of what we're into very mafioso type things, making money, extortion, all kinds of stuff. Basically, yeah, we were full-fledged mafia, Chinese mafia. We would go from drinking to like straight up robbing somebody, So it was very 0 to 100 back to zero. And that's just part of the lifestyle. We'd have to put in work, meaning prove ourselves, whether it's do things to the enemies, as we call the opposition, from robbing stores, robbing people, home invasions, whatever it was. There's just a lot of things that we did. And for me, it was just like hanging out with my friends. I never saw it as like a bad thing because I'm like, these are my friends. This is my family. This is what we do. And you just kind of went with the flow. And I knew one thing because I had a lot of like emptiness in my heart and I wanted to be validated. I recognized really even at a young age that the most violent person or the person who volunteered, or we call raise our hand the most, they got the most notoriety. And for me, notoriety translated to love at that time. So I wanted a lot of love and I would just raise my hand and do really crazy things, thinking not of who I'm hurting or the victims, but more of like, I want my friends to think I'm cool. And I want my family to like love me more. And this is like, I'm sold out for this. This is my university. This is my career, essentially. And so that was the mentality I had, even at the age of 12. Yeah. We planned to rob a person, not a well-known drug dealer, but he was barely coming up, but he had a lot of money. So we essentially set up like a fake robbery for him, or a fake drug deal, and we robbed him. And yeah, we moved him into the car, took him to his house, took all his money as well. And then he ended up snitching on us, like calling the cops on us after we let him go. And yeah, they caught all of us essentially. And because I was the youngest one, I took the rap. And I was thinking, I'm gonna do a couple months, right? But they end up, because we're getting RICO'd at that time, it's early 2000s. And, they were like, they said that I was like a child assassin. They were saying that, this is 12 years old, by the way, that I was doing all of these things. They were training me up to do X, Y, and Z. And so the judge was like, okay, they knew we were like creating some havoc on the streets. And so they threw the book at me. They gave me 4 years at the California Youth Authority. And I had heard about YA. There's a level of like juvenile hall, which is where all the youngsters go, and then juvenile offenders. And then there's YA, which is like a prison. And YA is where rapes will happen. Kids will rape other kids. They'll stab each other. Big, riots, segregated races. I had to go with the Asian Pride, which is all these Asians. There's the respected blacks. There's, all kinds of the Mexican side. So it was very, very wild in there. And I think when I went to YA, they literally tell you, you got to forget about your family because you're going to fight every day. So I thought I fought a lot outside of, jail. When I went there, my first night got into a fight. And then second night got into 3 fights because I had to line it up. And overall, I got into 40 plus fights from the age of 12 to 16. I was there for 4 years, maxed out, meaning you could normally get like 2 years off of your sentence if you do good. Most people they max out in YA because they know it's like gladiator school. That's the terminology for it. And a lot of people don't talk about it, but they know. I was at Nellis YA, it's the worst YA, and they closed it down. Thankfully, a lot of these YAs have been closed down because they're doing investigations and they found out that there was a lot of child abuse. People went in there and came out way worse, and that's what happened to me. Yeah.
Psychologically, what was the impact on you, Johnny, of spending your pretty formative years in a place like that?
Yeah, it numbed me out to a lot of things. It actually made me a monster in that it was more entertaining when I started to see people get hurt. I was like, oh yeah, well, if he can't fend for himself, he deserves that. So it was completely twisted. And it gave me a lot of pride and a lot of arrogance because I could walk the line, meaning I didn't roll it up. I didn't PC up. I didn't go, oh, help me. Like I survived that. So it gave me this bravado about myself. Yeah, see, I can do it. I'm a gangster. Like I really want to live that life and I'm not scared of anything. And I remember for those years, I was like an animal. I just didn't like think of anything. I didn't think at all. Hey, let's do this. Okay. And I just do it. Like I would not think and I would just react. I was all emotion.
And then what happened next in your journey?
So I get out of YA at the age of 16. I last 67 days. So 2 months and a week. And then I get into it with somebody else. It was a rival gang. They were stacking, meaning they were throwing gang signs when they were driving. And I was joyriding with my dad's car. At that time, I had a gun on me. I looked over and I just started shooting at them. And so I got caught for 2 counts of assault with deadly weapon and shooting at an inhabited vehicle. And yeah, I was looking at life at first, and then 19 to life. And then they dumbed it down. Thank God. We took a deal. I took a plea deal for 10 years with 85% for 2 counts of assault with deadly weapon. And I started to serve my time. So I hit the main line, or the general population in prison, California Department of Corrections. And I was 16 and a half, 17. Yeah. And I was there with the big boys. And that was scary. You're in there with grown men. And you hear stories of prison, but until you experience it, it's just not the same. But I was kind of scared, like, oh, okay. There was stabbings, there was a lot of beatings. There was riots, races going against races. And there's no one-on-ones in prison, meaning you don't say, hey, I have a problem with you, let's step to the side. That's not allowed. If one person fights, the whole car has to jump in. So we move as a car, as a unit, right? So I've seen helicopter, life, if they don't bring him to the hospital within the next 10 minutes because he got stabbed 50-something times by 4 other people, he's gonna die. So I've seen those types of things. I've seen the correctional officers abuse the inmates, beat them up, take them behind a room, jump them basically, with the block gun, which is, crowd control gun, pepper spray, a lot of stuff, a lot of violence.
How long were you in prison for the second time?
So they gave me 10 years. I was there for 8 years and 6 months, 85%, meaning 85% of 10 years. Yeah.
So how old were you when you got out of prison?
24. Yeah, 24, 25. Yeah. I remember the week, more like the month before, I was kind of struggling with being released because I was in there for so long. And, you see different people. I had a cellmate who was a Muslim, and he was completely rehabilitated in my eyes. He was, he was in there for murder. He was there for 20-something years. I looked up to him a lot. We were cellmates at one point. And then he finally got a release date. And he essentially got released. And he's like, I'm never going to come back here. And everyone believed in him. He was like, yeah, bro, you got it. You were the jailhouse lawyer. He never cursed. He was very respectful. Everybody loved him. And yeah, a few months to a year later, he was back. Yeah, he was back, and I was like, what the heck happened, And it was just, he just looked like a deflated human being, like a deflated balloon, And that's when I realized, man, it's over for you. You're not even on the level of this dude. You go out there, it's gonna be tough. Mind you, I spent all my adolescent developmental years in prison, so I wasn't even half the man this guy was. And so I just was like, yeah, it's done. So I remember having almost a panic attack and having these intrusive thoughts, should I just stab somebody to stay here? Because I have 2 strikes. If I get 1 more strike, I'm gonna do a minimum of 25 years to life. So, maybe I should just live in here. I'm respected in here. People love me. My homies are here. But luckily, I didn't do that. Made it out, and it was tough. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try and fly straight. Let me try my hand at this. Let me live a better life, as I don't want to go back there. And then I was very hopeful at first. Oh yeah, people are gonna give me a second chance. I was hearing some of my friends had jobs, and it's like, okay, cool. I applied to a lot of places, and nobody showed me any love. So then I got pissed. I was like, okay, give it about a week. I gave it a week, no response. And then I was like, man, F this, I'm gonna just do what I know how to do. So I tell my friends, plug me in. I start selling drugs. So I start, making on average $30,000 to $50,000 a month, and start to live it up, develop a cocaine addiction, develop, being very lustful with women, sleeping around, having, a penthouse, having a nice BMW, and I had it all. And then, yeah, I just started to live kind of in that way. But it was weird because during that time, I felt the most depressed. I felt emptiness. I felt loneliness. And it was because I thought that coming out the PJs, the project housing, that if I made X amount of money, I would be happy. I just really struggled with that when I got out of prison. And I really couldn't find any hope and peace in all the things that the world has told us you will find hope, peace, and joy in. Money, women, materials. But I was not happy. So I end up having an exit plan. So most gang members do have an exit plan. There's an expiration date, right, for this type of lifestyle. And we understand that. As I get out, I'm elevated to the status of a OG or, big homie, as they say, meaning somebody who's now has influence. I have people who are looking up to me. I met kids that I never knew, 15, 16-year-old kids like, I heard about you and, I want to be like you. And I'm just like, whoa, I don't even know you guys, But that's because other people who grew up with me were telling them stories that I did. And so I gained a lot of notoriety in that way. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, what can we do? So I'm making this money, but I have this coke addiction. So I'm turning all this money back into snot. I'm wasteful, and we're like, okay, let's probably rob somebody. That was just our thoughts. Let's rob somebody who has a lot of money. My logic was, if a person is selling drugs and they're drug dealers, like they do all the work to sell the drugs, they have all this money, we just rob them. So we don't have to sell all these drugs, constantly looking over our shoulders, getting scared if people rob us. So we just rob the drug dealers. That was our plan. And so I end up devising this plan, and we end up together coming collectively to rob this person. It was me and my road dog, which is my best friend who grew up in the hood with me. And we got put on, meaning, entered the gang around the same time. And he was wild. He was just like me. We're best friends, essentially. We robbed this gang member, and we planned for me to go to the right of the car, and he was supposed to go to the left of the car. But I ended up stepping to the right, and he stepped in front of me. I guess in the moment, the adrenaline was kicking, so he forgot the plan. I'm like, no worries, I go to the left, and then I hear 3 gunshots ring out. But actually, I start feeling the bullets, like I see the back window break and the bullets whizzing towards me, and I'm like, oh snap, we're getting shot at. So my friend obviously falls, and he got shot in his stomach, and then the car takes off, and then I see him dying, and I was like blown away. Like I just froze. And then I'm like, oh shoot, like, okay, the cops are gonna come. I kind of fell back into myself, and I was like, all right. And I tried to pick him up. He couldn't walk. He was already convulsing. His whole body was tight, and his eyes were like rolling back, and he basically died in my arms. And so obviously I felt very guilty, because I'm like, if he had just stuck to the plan, I would have been shot for sure, And so I felt like he took those bullets from me. So through that, I developed a lot of survivor's guilt. I was very, very depressed. I thought I was depressed coming out of prison. Depression on top of the survivor's guilt was really unbearable. And during that time, I was trying to commit suicide. I was doing things like I was more active in the streets. I was more, basically trying to get people to kill me. I was doing things that were wild, just aimless, mindless things, because I didn't have the courage to really end my life. I also did a lot of drugs, way more drugs at that time, cocktails and things like that, so I could overdose, hoping that I'm just gonna go to sleep, die high, basically. I just went through a lot at that time. And so, it was tough. It was a tough time for me. Yeah. So about a week after that, I had someone who I courted into the gang, a youngster, mirror image of me, splitting image of me, alcoholic father, Chinese Mandarin descent. Mother was Buddhist as well. Didn't grow up in the projects, but grew up in a rough area. South El Monte is a very rough area too. And just loved me, looked up to me, called me big homie. I, courted him into the gang. And I find out in a car-to-car shooting, he gets murdered. And then 3 days after that, I get a friend who sends a kite, which is a cryptic letter, coded letter from prison. Also, I grew up with this guy. I'd known him since I was 5 years old. pamper status, as we say. He ends up sending this weird, eerie letter of, hey, bro, think about me, look to the mountains. I love you, bro. I'll see you when I get here and this. And then I'm just like, what the heck is this guy talking about? And 3 days after that, I find out that he commits suicide in prison. So I was feeling just death all around the corner, right? My friend just died. It was just a lot. It was like all the dominoes, all the people who I was loving in my life were like dying, essentially. And I knew my time was like, I just felt it. I was like, I'm gonna die soon. And so out of the blue, I talked to my mom and I share with her what happened. And she says something that's kind of wild. My mother was Taoist Buddhist for all of her life. She was in the bed before my dad got to bed. She was out of bed before my dad got out of bed, right in the morning. So she's very devout. And she believed like in good deeds outweighing the bad deeds and stuff. And then 4 years before I get out of prison, she converts to Christianity. And she's just like telling me about Jesus. And I'm like, Mom, and this is excuse my arrogance, but I'm like, Jesus is a white man, we're Chinese. Like, and I was like very angry at my mom. I felt like she was religion hopping, basically. She kind of was like, you should come to church. I was like, I'm not coming to church. Like, no way, right? I don't belong in the church. I want to stay away from the church. And my mother's car breaks down in San Bernardino, which is about an hour away from her home church, which is now my home church. But it breaks down an hour away. We drive from there. I pick her up because my brother's in prison at this time, incarcerated for 14 years. My dad is still deadbeat husband, deadbeat dad, doesn't care, drunk all the time. So she's like panicking when she's calling me, Johnny, I need to, get to church. Can you please just drop me off? All right, fine. So I go, I pick her up, I drop her off. As soon as she opens the door, I smell the smell of black bean noodles. Black bean noodles is my favorite dish, right? It's the same dish my dad used to make me. I smell it and I'm like trying to keep it gangster, as we say, meaning like not react to it. But, the pastor comes out, short pastor, Korean dude, broken English. My mom's kind of like translating what he's saying. And he goes, oh, Johnny, I heard a lot about you. And I'm like, okay. He goes, I'm glad that you're home. And we made homemade black bean noodles, jjajangmyeon, they call it. And he goes, would you like me to package some of it for you and send you on your way? I'm sure you're hungry. And being Asian, we're very big on breaking bread, sharing food and things like that. So I was like, this is kind of disrespectful if I don't at least go into the church with him. For some reason, I had this pull of like, let me just go inside. He'll probably walk me around the church and then I can leave. So I go there, I go inside. They have a really nice church. We sit down and he feeds me, and hands down till this day, the best tasting black bean noodles. And then he allowed me to kind of share my story a little bit, but it was, again, I was very closed book. Didn't share too much. Yeah, I just grew up here and I was in a gang and just got out of prison. Like that's literally what I shared with him. It was all interesting. You had a very interesting story. Thank you for sharing that. But then my pastor did something that was really, really scary for me. He said, how is your relationship with your father? And I was like, I thought that was awkward. I was like, horrible. I don't have a relationship with him. We've been estranged for 12 years, 13 years now. And to be honest, Pastor, like, I didn't share with you, but he beat me, beat my mom, beat my brother. I'm okay if he dies and like, I never see him. And he goes, yeah, you're right. I understand. I also had a very abusive father being Korean and, X, Y, and Z. So me being a pastor, I'm very good at seeing people's hearts and piecing together relationships. I believe by faith, Johnny, if you apologize to your father, that peace will flow. And I obviously got angry. Apologize. I'm the victim. Pastor, I never asked to be born. Like, why would I do that? That's crazy. I almost was going to walk out because I was pissed. But he said, remember, Johnny, I really want you to be happy. Like, the reason why we're having this conversation is because I want you to be happy. And I thought about it. Yeah, that's true. What is Pastor gaining from this? I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. I call my dad, and I remember the first thing that he says when he picks up the phone. I was like, hey, I didn't even call him dad, right? I called him by his name. And I was like, Bruce. I was like, and he's like, who's this? So immediately I got mad. Like, you can't even recognize your own son's voice. And then the next thing he said, I told him, it's Johnny, your son. The next thing he says, he follows it up with, I don't have any money. And so I got pissed. And I wanted to say, like, I don't need your money, right? But I was like, look, Dad, I don't need your money, but I needed to meet with you. I have to talk to you about something. And then he was kind of like shocked too. And he's like, okay, what about? And I was like, it's just something really important for me. I hope you can meet. It's gonna be at this location. So we went to go eat Vietnamese noodle soup. It's called pho. And we get there in my old neighborhood in Alhambra. And I remember it was awkward. He gets there before me. So I get there, he's sitting there, and I'm just like, it was tense. I'm getting cold sweats. I remember like feeling just very nervous, actually. And I sit down, and my dad won't look me in my face, and I won't look him in his eyes either. It was just like awkward looking to the side. And I just muster up the courage, and I go, look, Dad, I called you here today because I wanted to say I'm sorry. And then he kind of was like shocked. And I'm sorry for being a gang member. I'm sorry for ruining your dream. You came to the States for an American dream. I obviously didn't help you. I probably made it worse. I'm sorry that I disrespected you in any way. I'm sorry that I, went to prison, wasn't able to help you, and you didn't speak a lick of English, so it was probably got taken advantage of. And then he just looks at me and he starts crying. And I was like, that's the first time I see my dad cry. And then he goes, no, son, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being a bad father. I'm sorry. I always wanted to be close to you, but I'm sorry that the drinking, and because I couldn't handle that, broke the family apart. We just got up and we hugged each other. And it was very, very beautiful in that moment. Two grown men with this wall of resentment just crushed in a matter of minutes, And so that's really what changed my life completely. And that's what I do now all day, 24/7 as a prison minister. I go into these prisons and I help these people who are struggling. And, it's easier for them to listen to me because I look like them. And I walk in there, I'm tatted down, and I've been to the places that they've been to. And I even see some of my friends in the prison system who are LWOP, meaning life without parole. They're never going to get out of prison. So when I visit, they're very happy. And they know how I was before, to see the transformation, to see the peace inside of my heart, soft-spokenness and all that. They're able to be like, wow, like he did really change. It's definitely not Johnny, so yeah.
If you could go back to 10-year-old Johnny and say anything to him, what would you say?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say be patient. And don't trust your thoughts. Don't trust what you see right now, because there's so much other things that's going to happen later. It's worth it. Yeah, I would tell myself, you're going to do what you're going to do, because 10-year-old Johnny would not listen to anybody. But just be patient and know that there's hope at the end. It's very hopeful. I think because I didn't have a lot of hope in my life. Sorry. I think it's really different because I never thought that I would be in this position. So I'm just emotional because I'm thankful. I didn't think that I would ever be out of prison. And so I'm just grateful. Yeah.
Dane was my last best friend. Dane, sake. Other than my ex-girlfriend, Dane was the last person that I trusted, And I couldn't get him back. I couldn't get him back in time. And now he's gone.